The smell hit me first, fear mixed with lemon furniture polish. It's a scent I've known for 23 years in this business, usually right before a hotel chain goes belly up or some executive gets caught stealing from petty cash. But this time, that stench was coming from my own side of the conference table. I'm Garrison Mills, 51 years old, and I've been climbing the hospitality ladder since I was 28. Started as a night auditor at a roadside motel, worked my way up to executive VP of operations. 23 years of 60-hour weeks, crisis management, and building something I was proud of. And now I was about to get my walking papers from a kid who thought synergy was a magic word. Pierce Donovan, the CEO I'd practically carried through 3 economic downturns, wouldn't look me in the eye, too busy swirling ice in his crystal tumbler like it held winning lottery numbers. Across from him sat his daughter Ivy, 24 years old, wearing a blazer that cost more than my monthly mortgage. She was scrolling through her phone, that blue light washing over a face that had never heard the word no in her entire life. "Garrison," Pierce finally said, his voice rough as sandpaper. "We feel the company needs a fresher perspective. Ivy has some innovative ideas about digital transformation and next-generation hospitality experiences." Digital transformation? Last week, this kid suggested we replace our concierge staff with iPads to gamify the guest experience. We handle high-end luxury properties. Our clients don't want to play games. They want a human being who knows the difference between Egyptian cotton and regular sheets, and can fix a broken toilet at 3 a.m. without calling tech support. Ivy finally looked up from her phone. Her eyes had that dead look you see in trust fund kids who've never worked a real day in their lives. "See, Daddy, this is what I mean. Garrison is so analog. We're pivoting to a disruption model that leverages AI and social media integration." I almost laughed. Disruption model. Sounded like something she read on LinkedIn while waiting for her $12 oat milk latte. Before I get into the details of how they screwed me over, let me tell you, if you've ever been stabbed in the back by incompetent management, you're going to love how this story ends. "The merger with Neo Hospitality is happening, Garrison," Pierce said, finally finding some backbone, though it was pretty crooked. "Part of their conditions is restructuring the executive board. We're going to have to let you go, effective immediately." It wasn't the firing that hurt. It was the erasure. I'd built this company's reputation brick by brick. I was the one who saved their necks during Hurricane Sandy when half the city lost power. I was the one who secured the governor's annual retreat contract 3 years running. And now I was being traded for some generic disruption strategy led by a girl whose biggest challenge was choosing the right Instagram filter. "I see," I said, standing up. I straightened. "My navy tie. No wrinkles. Never let them see you sweat." "And my equity buyout?" Ivy chirped up like some annoying bird. "Pennies on the dollar, technically, since the merger dilutes previous stock options." Legal drew it up. "It's all in the packet." Pierce slid a thick manila envelope across the table. It stopped inches from my hand. I knew what was inside without opening it. A check for $47,000, looked big to someone who'd never worked but was pocket change for a 23-year partner, a non-disclosure agreement thick as a phone book, and a non-compete clause that basically banned me from working in hospitality in Illinois for 2 years. "You're making a mistake, Pierce," I said, ignoring Ivy completely. "Not because you're firing me, because you're letting a child run the show." "Watch it, Garrison," Ivy snapped, her voice losing that fake corporate polish and showing the spoiled brat underneath. "You're obsolete. Take the severance and go fix someone's plumbing or whatever old guys do." I walked out of that office with nothing but my dignity and a burning need for payback. But I didn't go home and drink myself stupid. I didn't key Pierce's Mercedes in the parking garage. I went to my apartment, sat at my kitchen table, and opened my laptop. They thought this industry was just about profit margins and Instagram moments. They forgot the other side, operations and control. I wasn't going to compete with them. The non-compete said I couldn't work for a competitor. It didn't say I couldn't become their landlord. The anger was there, cold and hard in my chest, getting tighter every time I thought about Ivy's dismissive wave. Go fix someone's plumbing. Well, I was going to fix something all right. I was going to fix their little red wagon permanently. I spent that first night staring out at the Chicago skyline, watching lights twinkle in buildings I used to manage. My phone buzzed with messages from colleagues who'd heard the news. "Sorry, man, end of an era. Let's grab drinks." I ignored them all. I didn't need sympathy. I needed leverage. By 4 a.m., the shock had worn off, replaced by crystal clear focus. I pulled up public records for venues Pierce's company used regularly. I knew their calendar better than they did. The annual Innovation Gala was coming up in 3 months, their biggest social event of the year, where they pat themselves on the back for existing, and I knew exactly where they were hosting it. The Marshall Room. A historic venue in downtown Chicago with high ceilings, gold leaf molding, and owners who were drowning in debt. The kind of place that looked impressive from a distance but smelled like old carpet if you got too close. Perfect. Ivy wanted disruption? She wanted to play games? Fine. I was about to teach her the first rule of real estate. The guy who holds the keys makes the rules. The soft blacklist is corporate America's polite way of destroying a career. Nobody tells you outright that you're unhireable. It's much more subtle than that. Phone. Calls go unreturned. Lunch meetings get rescheduled indefinitely. Headhunters suddenly have nothing in your vertical. Pierce and Ivy had done their homework, painting me as difficult and resistant to change. In Chicago's tight hospitality world, perception is everything. And right now, mine was worth about as much as a $3 bill. But they made one critical mistake. They assumed I wanted another job. I didn't want a job. I wanted an empire. I liquidated my 401k without blinking, refinanced my condo, called in favors from old-school investors who hated the tech wave as much as I did, but were too polite to say it in public. I formed Ursa Holdings LLC, named after the bear, because I was about to hibernate and wake up hungry. My days became a blur of spreadsheets and site visits. I wasn't looking for glamorous hotels. I was looking for distressed assets. The veins and arteries of the city's event scene, catering kitchens, linen supply warehouses, historic venues that were one bad month away from foreclosure. The Marshall Room was bleeding money like a stuck pig. I visited on a rainy Tuesday, posing as a freelance event coordinator scouting for a wedding. The place was a monument to mismanagement. Original 1920s woodwork caked in dust, threadbare carpets in the foyer, and a manager named Palmer Rodriguez, who looked like he hadn't slept since Obama was in office. "We have excellent availability," Palmer stammered, wringing his hands like he was doing laundry. "Very flexible terms." "I'm sure you do," I said, running a finger along a dusty windowsill. It came away gray with grime. "But I'm not interested in renting, Mr. Rodriguez. I represent a private investment group interested in acquiring the property." The color drained from his face, then rushed back like a broken dam. He looked like a drowning man who'd just been thrown a life preserver. Negotiating the sale was like playing poker with a 5-year-old who shows you their cards. They were desperate. The bank was breathing down their necks, threatening to turn the historic ballroom into an Amazon warehouse. I came in with a lowball offer that was still higher than what bankruptcy court would give them. My lawyer, Claire Thompson, handled the paperwork, sharp as a razor and meaner than a junkyard dog when she needed to be. To the sellers, I was just another faceless LLC with deep pockets. While the lawyers argued over details, I kept tabs on my old company through industry contacts. Ivy was all over social media, posting stories from the executive office I used to occupy. She'd replaced my solid oak desk with some glass monstrosity that looked like it belonged in a spaceship, installed a wellness corner with beanbag chairs and a juice bar. Most importantly, she'd sent out save the dates for the annual gala. Location, the Marshall Room. I printed that invitation and taped it to my refrigerator, my North Star, my target. The acquisition closed on a Friday afternoon in late September. No champagne, no ribbon-cutting ceremony, just wire transfers and signatures on legal documents. I now owned the venue where Ivy planned to launch her revolutionary hospitality vision to Chicago's elite. I went there that night, alone, used my new keys to walk into the empty ballroom, my footsteps echoing on the parquet floor that needed refinishing. Silent except for the old HVAC system humming in the background. Needed new filters, I noted automatically. Some habits die hard when you've spent 2 decades managing properties. I stood in the center of that room, imagining the round tables draped in white linens, the floral arrangements, the pretentious speeches about innovation and the future. I wasn't just a landlord now. I was the ghost in the machine, the puppet master behind the curtain. Over the next few weeks, I quietly upgraded key systems, fixed the lighting so I could control it remotely from a smartphone app, updated the security camera system so I had eyes in every corner, even the kitchen and storage areas. Most importantly, I reviewed every single contract attached to the venue with a fine-tooth comb. That's where I found my golden ticket. Buried deep in the boilerplate rental agreement was Clause 14B. Lessee and guests agree to maintain professional conduct toward venue staff. Verbal abuse, harassment, or derogatory behavior constitutes breach of contract, granting lessor immediate right to terminate event and eject lessee without refund. It was usually meant to protect waiters from drunk wedding guests who got out of hand. The language was vague, broad, and entirely at the discretion of the venue owner. Me. It was my trap door, hidden in plain sight among dozens of pages of legal text. All I needed was for Ivy to walk onto it. Knowing Ivy the way I did after watching her operate for months, she wouldn't just walk onto that trap. She'd stomp on it with both feet while live streaming the whole thing. I kept the existing Marshall Room staff, good people who'd been let down by bad management for years, called a team meeting a week after the purchase, introduced myself simply as the new operations consultant. I didn't tell them I owned the building outright. I told them I was there to optimize operations and improve working conditions. They were terrified at first, expecting layoffs and budget cuts. Instead, I gave everyone a 10% raise and ordered new uniforms. Black, crisp, professionally tailored. We looked like a team that belonged in a luxury venue. We're elevating our standards, I told them during that first meeting. You're the best hospitality staff in the city. Time to dress like it and get the respect you deserve. The loyalty in their eyes was instant and complete. They'd been starving for real leadership, someone who understood that good service starts with taking care of the people who provide it. Then Ivy's requests started rolling in, and I watched the madness unfold firsthand. Since I was now CC'd on all management emails as the operations consultant, I had a front row seat to her insanity. 2 a.m. emails with subject lines like urgent, vibe shift needed, and emergency aesthetic pivot required. She wanted aerial acrobats hanging from ceilings that couldn't support more than a chandelier. Wanted to replace the historic oak bar with a molecular gastronomy hydration station, whatever the hell that meant. Wanted waitstaff in body paint instead of proper uniforms because clothes were so limiting to the human spirit. I systematically denied every dangerous request while approving the expensive ones. Let her hang herself with her own ridiculous budget. Regrettably, ceiling load-bearing capacity cannot support acrobatic performances. However, we can approve importation of those endangered orchids you requested, provided insurance waivers are signed. She was spending money like a drunken sailor on shore leave, and I was more than happy to take it. 3 days before the gala, Ivy came for her final site inspection. I was in the back office watching the security feeds I'd had installed. Saw her strut through the front entrance with a gaggle of terrified assistants trailing behind her like lost ducklings. Pierce followed, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 3 months. The stress was eating him alive. "It smells old in here," Ivy announced, scrunching her nose in the foyer I'd spent $10,000 restoring. "Can we pump in some scent? Like vanilla and success?" I nearly spit out my coffee. Vanilla and success. That was going to stick with me. "This lighting is so grandma chic." She gestured dismissively at the crystal chandeliers that were worth more than most people's cars. "Can we gel them neon pink? I want Cyberpunk Gatsby vibes for the live stream." Cyberpunk Gatsby. If F. Scott Fitzgerald wasn't already dead, that phrase would have killed him on the spot. "Maybe we should stick to the classic theme," Pierce suggested weakly, like a man who'd already given up but was still going through the motions. "The board expects innovation, Daddy," Ivy snapped back. "Tonight's about the future, not some dusty past." She turned her attention to Fletcher Martinez, our head waiter who'd worked the venue for 15 years. He was quietly polishing glasses at the bar, minding his own business. "Hey, you!" she called out like she was talking to a dog. Less polishing, more moving. "I want these chairs gone. Beanbags only for tonight." Fletcher looked confused, bless his heart. "Ma'am, this is a seated dinner service for 300 people. Did I ask for your opinion?" Ivy rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might fall out and roll across the floor. Help is so hard to find these days. Just do what I say. There it was. The disrespect. The casual cruelty that rich kids mistake for authority. I picked up my phone and called Claire Thompson, my lawyer. "Clause 14B fully enforceable in Illinois?" I asked without preamble. "Ironclad," she replied. "Long as you have proof of the violation." "Witnesses?" or recording? Both, I said, watching Ivy continue to berate Fletcher about thread counts and proper napkin folding techniques she clearly knew nothing about. Garrison, Claire warned, her voice getting serious. If you do this, you're burning every bridge in the industry. There's no coming back from public humiliation like what you're planning. Claire, I said, watching Ivy wave her hands around like some demented orchestra conductor, I'm not burning bridges. I'm charging admission to watch the fire. Gala night arrived with all the tension of a powder keg waiting for a spark. The venue hummed with activity as my staff prepared for what they thought was just another high-end corporate event. They had no idea they were about to witness the most expensive public meltdown in Chicago hospitality history. I showed up at 4 p.m., but not in my usual executive suit. Instead, I went straight to the employee locker room, pulled my hair back in a tight ponytail, scrubbed the expensive cologne off my skin, put on the staff uniform, black pants, black button-down shirt, black apron with the Marshall Room logo embroidered on the chest. Looked in the mirror. Garrison, the executive, was gone. In his place stood just another invisible service worker, the kind of person Ivy looked through rather than at. My heart was pounding, not with fear but with pure adrenaline. This was it. 23 years of experience and strategic planning coming down to one night. David versus Goliath, except David had bought the battlefield and written the rules of engagement. I grabbed a tray of crystal water glasses and merged into the flow of service. Showtime. There's a specific kind of invisibility that comes with wearing a service uniform in a room full of wealthy people. You become part of the architecture, as noticed as the wallpaper or the carpet. People look through you to see if their drinks are being refreshed, their plates cleared, their needs anticipated before they even voice them. I moved through that crowded ballroom like a ghost, weaving between tables draped in white linens and Ivy's neon light installations that looked like a rave had collided with a funeral. The room was packed with faces I'd known for decades, industry colleagues, city officials, society types who measured their worth in charity board appointments and country club memberships. Quentin Hayes, the CFO who'd probably be looking for a new job soon, was laughing too loudly at jokes that weren't funny. Linda from HR, who'd processed my severance without making eye contact, was desperately flagging down servers for more wine. My former colleagues studiously avoided looking in my direction, though they couldn't have recognized me anyway in this getup. They all looked right at me and saw nothing. Just a faceless vessel for champagne and canapes. It was simultaneously the most terrifying and exhilarating experience of my professional life. I served wine. I cleared bread plates. I kept my head down and my posture deferential. "Excuse me, sir. Right. Away, ma'am." My voice became a soft drone, stripped of every ounce of the authority I'd spent decades building. But I was moving with purpose toward the center of the room, toward table 1, the head table, the place of honor, where Ivy Donovan sat like a queen holding court, completely unaware that her kingdom was about to crumble around her. Table 1 was the danger zone. Pierce sat at the center looking like a man attending his own execution. Next to him, Ivy radiated manic energy in a dress that looked like aluminum foil had mated with a disco ball. She was live streaming, holding her phone up high like a torch. "Hey guys, we are live at the Innovation Gala. It is giving luxury, it is giving disruption," she announced to her followers, panning the camera around the room. I ducked slightly, placing fresh sparkling water on their table. "Ugh, finally," Ivy muttered without looking at me. "I've been parched for like 5 minutes. Service here is tragic, Daddy. We should buy this dump and completely gut it." "Ivy, please," Pierce sighed. "We're guests here." "We're not guests. We're the money," she corrected him, loud enough for surrounding tables to hear. "Without us, this place is just a dusty museum." I filled her glass with steady hands, wanted to pour it in her lap, wanted to grab that microphone from the band and announce her incompetence to the room. But I waited. The trap had to spring perfectly. Dinner service began. The salad course arrived. Arugula with deconstructed vinaigrette that Ivy had demanded, which basically meant dry leaves and a dropper of oil. The guests looked confused. I saw Quentin Hayes lean over to her. "When do we announce the Q3 numbers? They're pretty concerning." "Boring," Ivy sang out like she was dismissing a child. Tonight's about vision, Quentin. Don't bore me with math. We're pivoting to vibes. Quentin winced. That was the look of a man watching his retirement fund evaporate in real time. The main course arrived, filet mignon, medium rare. The kitchen was running like a Swiss watch under my behind-the-scenes supervision. I'd briefed the head chef personally to ensure perfection. If things went wrong tonight, they'd blame the venue. I needed the venue to be flawless, so the only problem in the room would be Ivy. I was assigned to clear table 1 after the main course. As I approached, Ivy was in the middle of telling some story about her spiritual journey to Tulum, gesturing wildly with her fork. So the shaman was like, "You have the soul of a warrior queen," she said, flinging a piece of steak fat onto the pristine white tablecloth. It landed with a greasy splat right next to her wine glass. She stopped, looked at the stain, then looked up at me. "You," she snapped, pointing a manicured nail at my chest like she was identifying a suspect in a lineup. "Me, ma'am?" I asked, keeping my voice low and respectful. "Yes, you. Look at this mess." She pointed to the piece of steak she had just thrown. "This table is disgusting. You serve food in a pigsty? I apologize, ma'am. I'll clear it immediately." I reached for her plate, but she wasn't done. "Don't just clear the plate, clean the mess," she shrieked loud enough to stop conversations 3 tables away. The band actually missed a note. "God, are you stupid? Do you need me to draw you a diagram?" I felt 300 pairs of eyes burning into my back. Every power player in Chicago watching this moment unfold. "Ivy, calm down," Pierce hissed, finally showing some backbone. "No, Daddy. This is what I'm talking about. Standards." She grabbed her wine glass, a heavy red Cabernet that probably cost more than Fletcher made in a day, and deliberately tipped it over. Dark liquid poured across the white tablecloth like blood, dripping onto the floor, splashing onto my black apron. "There," she sneered with the satisfied smile of someone who'd never faced consequences for anything. "Now you have something worth cleaning. Chop chop, busboy." The silence in that room was absolute, a vacuum where sound used to be. 300 people holding their breath, waiting to see what happened next. I looked at the wine soaking into my apron. I looked at Ivy's smug, triumphant face. I looked at Pierce, who had buried his face in his hands like he could make this all disappear. It was time. I didn't scramble for towels. I didn't apologize profusely. I didn't run to get a manager. Instead, I slowly reached into my apron pocket and pulled out a crisp, white service cloth. Folded it once, twice, with deliberate precision. The silence stretched like a guitar string about to snap. I stepped forward and wiped the spilled wine from the table with the grace of someone who'd spent 23 years perfecting his craft. I absorbed every drop, cleaned the wood surface, and placed the soiled cloth on my tray. Then I stood up straight, rolled my shoulders back, lifted my chin, and finally looked Ivy Donovan in the eye. But I didn't look at her like a server. I looked at her like a CEO. "Table 6 needs clearing," Ivy mocked, sensing something had shifted but not understanding what. "Did I say you could just stand there? Get on your knees and scrub the floor." "No," I said. The word hit that room like a gunshot. "Excuse me?" Ivy laughed high and nervous. "Did the help just say no to me? Daddy, fire him. Fire him right now." Pierce looked up from his hands, really looked at me for the first time. The hair was different, the clothes were wrong, but the stance, the steel in my spine, he knew that stance. He'd seen it across boardroom tables for 2 decades. "Garrison," he whispered. It was barely audible, but in that silent room, it might as well have been shouted through a megaphone. Ivy whipped around to her father. "Who? What are you talking about?" I kept my eyes locked on Ivy. "You seem confused about the hierarchy here. You think because you rented this room, you own the people in it." "I do own you," she screamed, standing up so fast her chair toppled backward. "My father's company is paying for this whole thing. We pay your salary. I could buy this dump and turn it into a parking lot tomorrow." "Actually," I said, my voice carrying clearly to every corner of the room, "you can't." I signaled to the lighting booth. The house lights shifted and a spotlight widened to include me in its golden circle. "Because this dump," I continued, stepping closer to her, "was sold 3 weeks ago to a very particular owner who takes guest conduct extremely seriously." Ivy blinked rapidly, her brain trying to process information that didn't fit her worldview. So what? New owner? Same trash, she spat. The owner, I said, allowing myself a thin smile, is standing right in front of you, and you just violated Clause 14B of your rental agreement. I reached behind my apron and pulled out a black envelope with my personal seal, a bear representing Ursa Holdings. This, I said as she took it with trembling fingers, is your eviction notice. The murmur that went through that room sounded like a dam bursting. Shock, confusion, and for some people barely contained delight at watching entitled privilege finally meet its match. "You're insane," Ivy stammered, tearing open the envelope. "You're just a waiter having some kind of breakdown. Actually, I'm a 23-year hospitality veteran who just bought the venue where you plan to celebrate your incompetence. And you," I turned to address the entire room, "have just witnessed a textbook violation of our guest conduct policy." Two security guards materialized from the shadows, my security guards, wearing the crisp black uniforms I'd personally selected. "Ma'am," the lead guard said to me, completely ignoring Ivy's sputtering protests, "shall we escort the disruptive guests out?" "The back exit, please," I said calmly. "Through the service entrance. Since they clearly don't understand the difference between staff and guests, they can leave the way staff do." "You can't do this," Ivy shrieked, but her voice cracked with the first real fear she'd probably ever felt. "We have investors here, the press." "I know," I said, nodding toward the Chicago Tribune reporter who was frantically scribbling notes. "That's why I waited until the main course. Wanted to make sure everyone had a good view." The walk of shame in the Marshall Room is a long one. The ballroom stretches 100 feet, lined with mirrors that reflected Ivy's humiliation from every angle. She and Pierce had to walk that entire distance, flanked by my security team, while 300 of Chicago's elite watched in stunned silence. As the doors closed behind them, the room exhaled collectively. I stood there in the center of the floor, wine stains still on my apron, and addressed my guests. "Ladies and gentlemen, my apologies for the interruption. Since the original host has forfeited their event fee, the bar is now open courtesy of venue management. Please enjoy the rest of your evening." The aftermath was swift and brutal. The Tribune ran with Gala gone wrong, CEO's daughter publicly evicted by venue owner. Pierce's company stock dropped 18% in 2 days. Ivy disappeared from social media entirely, a small miracle. Within 6 months, I'd quietly acquired controlling interests in half the city's premier event venues. Every time Pierce's crumbling company tried to book space for damage control meetings, they found me waiting. Higher rates, stricter terms, final approval on all guest lists. Neo Hospitality bought what was left of Pierce's company for parts. He stepped down in disgrace. The board voted Ivy out permanently. I purchased their catering division at auction for pennies on the dollar. Today, I run Ursa Holdings from my restored office at the Marshall Room. Fletcher Martinez is my operations manager, wearing suits I buy him and earning 3 times what he made before. The staff who stood by me that night formed the core of my management team. I hosted my real launch party 3 months later. No influencers, no live streams, just the finest people in Chicago hospitality. Fletcher sat with his wife at the head table. The kitchen crew dined on food they usually cooked. It was a celebration of competence, loyalty, and old-school values. Sometimes the old guys know exactly what they're doing, and sometimes, if you're patient enough and smart enough, you get to watch arrogance destroy itself while you hold the keys to the kingdom. That's how a 51-year-old operations manager became the king of Chicago hospitality. All it took was remembering that in this business, service isn't servitude, it's power.